What's up, YouTube? This video just kind of came to me. I don't know what it's gonna do for me, but I think it could be an outlet for me to let some thoughts off of my mind that have kind of been burdening me for some years now. Um, so I don't know. I just thought about like if I could express the things I want to say to my dad. I'm gonna pretend as though this is him and he's opening to listening. Um, you know, uh, forget it. I don't even want to do it from that lens. I just want to talk. My dad and my mom had some sort of, they had a divorce because my dad had been, you know, unfaithful, essentially. And without going into further detail, you know, as a kid, I always, you kind of take for granted how important like having a family unit is. One that is very tight knit, one that is together. Like I remember I would pray at night before I sleep, just like I hope my family can stay together. I'm glad we're alive. I'm glad we're healthy. Like specifically, I just was like, I'm glad I have both my mom and my dad here. They both give me like a sense of like, security and stability, and just like a feeling of like family, like unit. Anything we go through, at the end of the day, I could come back home and like they're both there. Even if, at times my mom's mad about something and she's mad at me, or my dad's mad at me, because I was a teen and like, I had an attitude problem, I'm sure. But, you know, I like that was something that I knew at one point like could easily be taken for granted even at my young age, and I was very grateful. And then the move happened where my mom, had to move to Atlanta from Nashville because my grandfather was getting really, really sick. End of life sick. Essentially, he was entering his last years. At the time, we didn't know. Um, and he would keep having these incidents where he would fall, or like, just kind of things that were like happening that were like it could have kind of been, mitigated if there were people around that were actively responsible for him. I'm not gonna name people. I hope if family sees it they don't get offended, but um, my uncles were kind of going through their own things at the time, their own life crisis is, I guess, their own stresses, and there's a lot of divide at the time between my family. Like there's a lot of family fighting, there's a lot of name calling, there's a lot of people not being on good terms, and my mom was like, look, I don't have the time to be dealing with all of this long distance stuff. I'm here 5 hours away from my parents, and my father is dying, and my family can't get their shit together, so I'm gonna go there, and if I gotta be the sole caretaker, I'm gonna do it. And my mom went, and I watched her kind of just like put away this life that she worked so hard to maintain, to keep, to just like go and take care of her family, and of course move us along with her. And my dad was probably dealing with his own stresses as well, and yeah, long story short, it's just a lot of stalling in the move. um, you spend 15 years somewhere, right? Maybe not even 15, just like the 12 years we were in Nashville at the time, going on 12 years, like at that one house specifically. We were in Nashville longer than my whole life. We were in Nashville, you know. But like those 12 years of being in that house, you don't notice so many things pile up. And so like every time we'd be like, we're gonna move by the summer. Like I remember summer 2016 was like we're supposed to be out, and we just couldn't. Like there's so much left to like, so many like loose ends to tie, so many like things physically that just had to be like either thrown away or gotten rid of. It was so stressful. And I was working a summer job at McDonald's, my first job as a kid. It was tough on me. I was in junior year of high school too. I'd be leaving the whole life that I kind of made for myself here. All the friends that I have and just moving to somewhere else. I didn't feel comfortable about it, but part of me was excited for this new change. And the last thing that I needed at the time was for my parents to be splitting up. And you know, my dad was just acting really weird. He was acting like he couldn't find jobs out here when it was pretty possible he could find jobs. He just didn't know how to say that he didn't want to. The whole time my mom was moving, even though it was for valid reasons, right? She like couldn't, you know, sustain living 5 hours away from her family anymore if her little father's dying. The same reason my dad ultimately ended up going back to Somalia to take care of his dad, he somehow couldn't see my mom doing the same thing and just moving 5 hours to see her family. And yeah, that he was cheating on. We found out talking to people that he shouldn't have been while he's married, and it's interesting because my mom forgave him. She gave him multiple chances. I saw, and my dad still. I don't know. I don't know if it was people talking in his ears. I don't know if it was ego, pride. I'm sure it was a mixture of a lot of things, but he never took responsibility for it. And so he started blaming things on my mom. And then the topic of my parents kind of not living together anymore, when I was like, this is really stupid and could be easily resolved. My dad would just be dodging it every time after he left, he stayed in Nashville for like a few years. Which I'm sure must have been hard, right? You go from being the sole provider or main provider of an entire family unit, and then you're just on your own for a few years. But the topic of my parents' kind of situation, which was a big part of my life, obviously, became this elephant in the room every time I'd see my dad, and I could never see past it. Then obviously it led to like some perceptions about him that I never really wanted to even think of. And I just became more and more mad and hostile towards him. Not necessarily in the way that I acted, but it kind of ended up showing up in like a cold way. I just was cold toward. I couldn't see past my own pain. And to this day, even to an extent, I still can't. And he said he was gonna go to Somalia to take care of his dad. Maybe it was like I thought in my head it could be a moment where he goes there for a year or some change, right? He tells me he's gonna come back. He's not gonna be there long. My dad always lies to me about stuff like that. I get it. You need a break, take a break. I thought it'd be a time he just like maybe he'll come to a realization that things could be, things could work out. He just needs time to himself, right? Even though he, technically speaking, had a few years. This is just the naiveness of me as a kid, as his son, as somebody who he always talked to. Even these days when I talk to my dad occasionally, he'll talk to me like I'm a fucking baby, and I'm not. I'm his child, I get it, but I'm a grown man. And it's funny because when he left us, he told me, like, he kept telling me, even before he left, before really I knew anything that was going on before my parents, before the move, there were moments where he'd be like, you're going to be the man of the house soon. And I never really understood what that meant. I know I'm his oldest, like, son. I have an older brother. But that's not my dad, that's not for my dad. My mom was previously married before him. But still, that's his son. But he treated me like his really oldest. And we hung out a lot more, and we would have these conversations where he's like, you're going to be the man of the house now. And looking back, it was him relegating these adult responsibilities onto a child. And when he left and it broke my family apart and it put us in this horrible situation, I felt the burden of having to take up for him leaving. And my younger brother, right? it bothers me to think about, but like when I was 10, my dad had a restaurant, and like those are some of the like years where I was the closest with my dad. And when my dad left, my youngest brother was 10, and he didn't have a father figure. And my little brother was really close to my dad, like really close, kind of like how I was growing up. And I saw that really affect him. And obviously, we were taught not to really show our emotions to one another. So I never really talked to my younger brother about it. But you know, like I saw his grades slip in school. Like his freshman year of high school, the kid had like a mental breakdown. He was flunking everything, and it sucked to see because he's a smart kid, but he just couldn't focus. He was becoming distant. He was becoming more like, I don't know. He's becoming more like just easily agitated, right? We all knew why, but it's like we're all kind of going through this together, so we're getting mad at each other for us all having our own feelings and stuff. Um, and it's so sad to me now because I think it's so far past the point of fixing to where I'm not mad at my dad anymore. I actually found myself empathizing with him a lot, but there's nothing he could do at this point. We're all adults now. I'm 26. I was 17. You know, there's really nothing my dad could do to make up for those years, especially with my brothers for like lost time. That hurts so bad, man. You know, when my dad also went to Somalia, I thought he'd take the time to try to figure things out, maybe. And I heard he got remarried over there from other people, not from him, mind you. Mind you, we're having a WhatsApp, kind of conversation, keeping up every now and then. I was still trying to distance myself from him, but I didn't want to be an asshole, and I didn't even know if my feelings were valid at the time. But I heard these things, and I told him, and he was like, "Oh, it's just something that happens. When you need somebody to take care of an old person in the country, you kind of have to get remarried, and it's just a legal formality thing, which it is actually in the culture. But that doesn't excuse him having two kids." You're 60. You have two kids that in 20 years they're going to be in the same position as me because they basically don't have a father, but they have a grandfather instead who's going to be sick, who's going to need them to take care of them. It's kind of like the same situation my mom was in with my grandfather, but now it's going to be my dad's kids, right? I don't know. I still feel the burden of all this these days, man. It feels like a fresh wound, even though I've been dealing with it for 10 years. And I know my older sister, probably took it hard too. I never really got to talk to her about it. I know for like the first few years after, she kind of was a little cold about it. Like she would act like everything's okay, but she'd be depressed too every now and then. It's so weird. I never talk about this with my family. I might talk about it soon, but I feel like they wouldn't tell me how they feel about it. Because we just don't open up and share our emotions with one another as much as we need to. Because that's just, especially as a man, that's just like in society. It's like, bro, you can deal with your situations on your own. People got worse things. But it's like my family was kind of just like breaking apart in front of my eyes. I had my uncles fighting each other, my aunt fighting everybody, my grandmother just having an existential crisis because her husband's dying, but yet her kids are fighting, and all of this is going on when we need to be brought together. And it took for my grandfather to pass away for us to kind of start coming back as a family unit. And a part of me just really hates that had to happen. And as humans, it's so easy to take moments like these when we're all in good graces with each other for granted. And I feel like at a certain point, it's gonna get back to all of us being mean and nasty towards one another, and then, the cycle repeats. But yeah, I just thought to share that because these are my thoughts these days, man. Um, I miss my dad, but part of me wants him to stick up to his word. He said he's gonna come back and see us, and for 5 years I waited. Every day. Um, from 2020 on. All right, so now 6 years, right? I haven't seen him. And it's so hard to move on. So if any of you guys are going through something similar, just know I resonate, but I haven't talked about this. And it's funny because all of this happened on my YouTube years ago. I had this BTS YouTube channel. All of this was going on in the midst of that, and that's kind of why I have so much respect for BTS. Is because they really helped me get out of my head during these times, just through being a fan and being distracted with creating videos, whether I ever get the opportunity to tell them or not. But like, they helped me push through like some really tough points in time where I think otherwise I would have gone crazy. Um, it's kind of also why I have a love-hate relationship with social media, because I use that to procrastinate from the stresses of life, and I became addicted. So, all right.